How many four-letter words can I use on that?
Trying to switch to a double. Cheddar is driving. Nothing yet. Takedown, Michael Cheddar.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
Hale trying to sink him. He does. Maximus Hale the fall.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, and with me today is new Penn head coach, Matt Valenti. Coach, first of all, great to catch up with you now that we've gotten into a couple weeks into the offseason, but I can only imagine it's been a whirlwind week plus for you. Named the new head coach, your alma mater. So let's start there. What's the last week plus been like for you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, and I got to say I appreciate the Max Hale note in there too. So shout out to Max Hale on that one. Honestly, it's been a fun week, and it's probably been the most common question I've gotten over the last week is like, oh my gosh, how different has it been? And I'm like, well, it's not a whole lot different than the week before. So we're just hustling and grinding and trying to get ourselves set up for the future. And we got some good stuff happening down here in Philly, and I'm just trying to keep that momentum going.
Was there some sort of acclimation period when you get the official title? I loved your post on Twitter where it's not an April Fool's joke and you change your Twitter bio, and of course now you're the head coach after being the associate head coach for a little while. Was there some sort of celebration, acclimation period, or was it just like, all right, here you go, here are the keys to the kingdom, and off you go?
I would say that's a lot of what the last year was for us, was like kind of mapping our way through that transition of what that's going to look like. Celebration and all of that. That's not really my cup of tea in general. So no celebration, no nothing. We're getting right to business, getting to work, and focused on the future.
I do like that answer. You've been with Penn for a long time, wrestler, coach, administration roles. You've pretty much done it all. I mean, is this where you expected to end up at some point? I mean, was there a vision in your head where, you're winning national titles as a wrestler, you're going off in that direction? Did you envision yourself coming back to Penn and becoming the head coach, or did you see this coaching future, maybe back when you were a college student or shortly thereafter?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the short answer is no, absolutely not. I think it's a little bit of life experiences coming through. If I go all the way back to college, I went into college, I was going to be a doctor. I was in bio for 2 weeks and then I quit being a doctor. Then I became a history major with the idea that I was going to become a lawyer. I had the opportunity to work in a law firm here in Philly for a year and a half and learned that wasn't the path I wanted to go down. Graduated college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went up to Columbia, started coaching at Columbia, started a master's program up there. Told myself I was done wrestling, decided to go back and start competing again. Moved back to Penn, coached here back at Penn. I coached for 6 years here at Penn, got an opportunity to work in administration. I was like, yeah, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. Really enjoyed it. New AD came in, invited me to come over and move over to administration full time. And I think in all of those experiences, it gave me the opportunity to really zoom out and have some perspective on like, where's my heart? What do I want to do long term? What matters the most to me when I think about my job and the long term. And honestly, it just boils down to like, I love this program. I was fortunate to be a part of this program and around some incredible people who've been a part of this program for a really long time. And when you think about, for me at least, what the long term looks like if I can be in a position to leave this program better than when I left it, both when I left the first time and now that I'm back, that's my goal. Is like I want this program to be the best it can possibly be. If we win, awesome. That's an aspiration for sure. But like, I'm around great people every single day. I'm impacting young men's lives every day. Like, that's pie in the sky. Not a lot of people in the world get to say they're able to do things like that. So it was following my heart a little bit and understanding like, hey, this is an opportunity that I probably can't look past. And I'm excited about what I can do to help some people.
Was that coaching mentality a part of your mental state when you were a wrestler? I know you just mentioned, you worked in a law firm and you maybe be a doctor early on when you were in college. Was there a moment where you were like, okay, it finally clicked that you wanted to be a coach? Did it happen early on? Did it happen like while you're in college? Like, yeah, I'll maybe pursue that, but I want to get a standard job outside of wrestling first, and then maybe add that on. Or is there a moment when maybe you're in the law firm, you're like, you know what, I think I really just want to go back and coach wrestling?
I'll be honest, it was never a thought in my mind until I actually started coaching. So when I full disclosure, I went up to Columbia, started coaching up there. And the main reason I went up there was like, you know what, wrestling is my tool and I'm going to use it to help me get a master's degree. And then as soon as I started coaching and as soon as I saw the impact I could have on other people, I was like, actually, this is kind of sweet. Like I kind of really like this. This is fun. Like I helped somebody get a little bit better today.
Yeah.
You want to talk about like feeling productive and like, you know, feeling accomplished. That felt like accomplishment. All the wrestling accolades, all that other crap, like, yeah, it was cool. It was fun. You know, a lot of that came from I hated losing, but being able to help people get a little bit better every single day. You talk about fulfillment, like that's where that comes from.
Did you get a lot of fulfillment learning from a guy like Roger Reina? Of course, you know, he almost got, I don't want to even call it a send-off tour, because it was just like, yeah, okay, I'm stepping down at the end of the year. Matt's going to take over. And it's like, yeah, championships are in Philly. That's great. But okay, I'll see you guys later. But like, he obviously is one of the more respected guys across the entire country as far as Division I head coaches are concerned. What did you learn from him over your time learning underneath him as a coach? And, you know, what were your main takeaways from that?
Yeah. So I've been incredibly lucky that I can call Coach Reina a mentor, but I also had him as a coach. I had him as a boss this past year, right? He was my boss. I was also his boss for about 6 years as well. So I've learned from Roger in about every single possible position you could possibly learn from. And when you talk about kind of program building and culture building and all the pieces that go into being a true CEO of a wrestling program or any program or organization for that matter, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody better to learn from. And over the course of the past year, just kind of being under his wing and understanding what this is going to look like, you know, I'm as lucky as any head coach in the country can be in terms of, you know, stepping into a role, being prepared for that role, at least in my opinion. Now, does that mean I'm going to be 100% successful? Absolutely not. I'm going to fail, and I'm actually looking really forward to failing at some point here so I can learn a little bit more. But you know, I'm fortunate that I've been able to learn from him and coach alongside him this year. And actually, this year he's going to be around in a head coach emeritus role, which we're working through exactly like what that's going to mean. But he's going to be around helping us out. And you think about the long-term future of this program. There's no better person to have in the fold helping kind of map out what that'll look like.
So I know you're still trying to map out what that looks like. Does he still help you with some sort of transition, or is he mostly hands off and just works on technique with the guys in the corner? Does he help with the RTC? What exactly do you envision, I guess, especially over the next couple of months as we get into the summer?
I mean, in the near term, you know, that season's over and we're kind of shifting our focus to what's next. I mean, Coach has been an incredible recruiter through the years, so we're really digging in on the recruiting side of things. But I would say like one of our biggest priorities is fundraising, right? We're in a unique situation here at Penn, particularly in light of like the NCAA landscape and all the changes that are coming. We fundraise a lot of money, and we have an incredibly generous alumni community and donor base that we need to continue to engage. And there's no one in the country better, at fundraising for an athletic program than Coach Reina is. And I'm trying to spend as much time as possible understanding, learning from him. How do we make these asks? What does this look like? How do we cultivate these donors? How do we make sure this program's set up for success financially in perpetuity? You know, how do we become model citizens, the athletic department? All right, this landscape's changing. Everybody else in the world's worried about what, you know, they're going to pay athletes or whatever. Like, we got all this other stuff happening, and we know who we are. We know how we operate. We know what it looks like, and how do we sell that message to make sure that this program's set up for financial success, you know, forever. And, you know, I think we're well on our way to doing that. And, oh yeah, by the way, win some wrestling matches and get on the mat and teach some technique and help some guys get better. Like, we're doing all of that right now, and I don't expect that to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, let's not forget, there's actually a wrestling to be done over the summer and, of course, next fall and winter. When you talk about the fundraising aspect of it, of course, you know, I think people can at least grasp, you know, it's not high school wrestling where, you know, you a couple of booster club meetings and you go around town. Obviously, Philly's a very vibrant area. It's really risen in especially the last couple of years for Penn, for you guys. You know, when you're talking about all the local schools, there's a lot of talent in the area, but it seems like Penn has really, you know, been the boat that I forget the expression now. It's like the boat, the tide that rises all boats, or something along those lines. What does it look like? I mean, what do you hit? Do you just hit the fundraising in just basically the city? Do you try to go statewide? Do you go nationwide? What does that look like in the immediate future?
Yeah. So, I mean, from a fundraising perspective, we we certainly have a national presence, not just
Mhm.
regional. We have a national presence. So we're talking to people all across the country. And honestly, we have a global presence too. We've got people in London, we've got people in other places.
Mm.
So we're just trying to figure out, hey, who do we need to be talking to? Who do we need to go visit? Who do we need to go see? We're getting on a train next week to go up to New York City to go meet with some donors. Like trying to map out that entire plan of like, hey, where are the people who care about Penn Wrestling or invested and interested in Penn Wrestling and want to get back to help support Penn Wrestling? And we're looking anywhere and everywhere to find those folks.
Is that kind of interesting when you have an international presence like that, where we have an alumni base? Maybe they work in the financial industry, but they're out in London, as you just alluded to. I know a lot of these big wrestling schools, they have an international presence because maybe they bring in wrestlers from other countries to train in their RTC. You kind of go the opposite way with some of your alumni base, where maybe they're not necessarily wrestlers, or they were, but now they're working overseas. What's that process like, and what's it like to have something like that for Penn?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting piece of the puzzle. And, I think we're fortunate that most people that we talk to have a pretty healthy wrestling connection. And most of the time usually have a Penn Wrestling connection. So they know about the program. They've either been through the program or had a kid in the program or were connected to the program in some way, shape, or form. So, the sell for us of what this looks like is really not that difficult, right? We're selling the experience and the benefit of a Penn degree alongside wrestling here at Penn and the impact that has. What's most interesting when you get into these conversations is, I'll say this as one of these people, but it's not necessarily the most successful wrestlers who give back the most to the program, right? And this is one of those things that I think helps you with perspective as you think about wrestling programs. Is like you never know where your next great benefactor is going to come from. And I would say our biggest donors aren't necessarily our best former wrestlers, right? So as you think about culture building and program building, like everybody having a good experience is an incredibly important piece of the puzzle, because whether we go overseas or whether we stay in the country or we stay in Philadelphia, we go talk to somebody. If they had a crappy experience as part of the program, they're probably not going to be too excited about giving back to the program, right? So it's understanding everybody's experiences and what it looked like. And I've heard the gamut of experiences too, right? We've had some people who lived through tough experiences while they were here as part of the wrestling program. They're like, listen, I want to give because I want it to be better than what I had. And we've had some who lived through the golden ages of our program who were like, heck yeah, I want to get back to that. And let's continue to build towards that and whatever's next above that. So it's everything in between. And it's just kind of learning about like everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different. And how do we make their experience fit what their vision is for the program? It's a fun piece of the puzzle to think about.
Well, you were highly successful as a wrestler. You talk about that golden age of Penn wrestling. You guys were really, really good this year. Ivy League runner-ups in the tournament, 10-6 in duels. You had an All-American and CJ Composto, 7 qualifiers to go along with that. So I guess just to put a bow on it, now that we're weeks into the offseason at this point, but what was this last year like for you as the associate head coach? Of course, it was Roger's final year at the helm, and he's still going to be around the program, but it was I mentioned before how it wasn't quite a farewell tour, but it was a nice way, at least for Roger, to go out with a lot of success this year. What did you guys do this year? Did you do anything differently to see this successful season come to fruition? Was it just a product of a lot of development? Had this whole season come together where it's like, okay, yeah, we were one of the better teams in the entire country this season?
This season was really interesting because the way we kind of came together as a staff is probably not how you design a staff to come together. Obviously, with the announcement last April, I'd been out of wrestling technically for 9+ years. Doug Zaff came on board shortly after, but Doug's a recent grad, and there's always a dynamic of like, how does a recent grad who knows the guys on the team, who wrestled with guys on the team, how does that work out? We put a lot of eggs in the basket of Darian Cruz and getting Darian Cruz on staff here. But he didn't want to make a decision until after the Olympics. So that put us into, August, September before we knew what our staff was going to look like. So as we kind of went into the year, we really took the approach of like, listen, we got to help these guys understand that they can trust us as coaches so that they can start to believe in themselves and what they're capable of. The technical side of things, the wrestling side of things, like all of that, yes, it was a priority. Yes, we were trying to focus on it, but it was all secondary to making sure these guys understood who they were and what they're capable of doing. And that was really the focus of this season, was helping our guys understand that they can and should be wrestling with the best guys in the country on a consistent basis. And I think throughout the year, that belief continued to build. And we went through a stretch at the end of the season that was super unique and really challenging. So we wrestled Cornell on a Sunday,
Mhm.
Lehigh on a Thursday, Princeton on a Sunday, and then Rutgers on a Wednesday. So within 10 days, we wrestled 4 teams, 3 of which were in the top 15.
Yeah.
And we warned the guys going in, like, our training is going to be weird, and it doesn't matter. You guys are ready for this. Your weigh-ins are going to be weird, and it doesn't matter because you guys are ready for this. But you guys also have to understand, if you start feeling sorry for yourself, you're going to get your butts kicked. And if that's the path we're going down, that's your choice. Or you can decide to stand up and say, you know what? I trust in my training. I believe in what I'm capable of doing. And did we win all those dual meets? No, but we competed like hell in every single one of those dual meets. And I think we came out of that stretch as a team going into the Ivy tournament, and our guys looked around at each other and they were like, yo, that was legit. Right. And I think that helped build the confidence going into the Ivy tournament and then into NCAAs, where they truly started to believe in what they're capable of doing. And for me, as somebody who now like got to see that development happen over the course of the season, you want to talk about excitement and taking over a program where you got a bunch of guys who really believe in what they're capable of doing. And we had 4 guys in the round of 12, right? 3 of them didn't get through, 1 did. Those guys all walked off the mat and they were just like, no, we belong here. And you could see that kind of aura around the team.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's fun. And that was really what we were focused on trying to develop this year. And I'm incredibly proud of our guys for what they were able to accomplish, and of our staff with being able to instill that in an unorthodox setup where we really were not as necessarily as stable as you might think, or would like to be, right? We found a way. And that's what I'm proud of our guys on, is like they found a way and they showed that they deserve to be in the mix with the best guys in the country.
Yeah, I remember firsthand the duel against Rutgers to end the season. Hard fought duel, one of the better duels of the season. And I think it really carried over to a lot of momentum of the Ivy League tournament. And when I was over at the Ivy League tournament, that's where I want to pivot right now. Again, it's a unique environment right up at Princeton. First time ever that the Ivy League has their own tournament. So smaller tournament, 6 teams. I guess my first question on that was the preparation any different, or were you just like, hey, it's a postseason tournament, bids are on the line. There's a lot of pride in this conference, especially being at the first Ivy League tournament. So you had a lot of first-time champions for the conference. What was the preparation like for that tournament, first and foremost?
Honestly, in the grand scheme, it wasn't a whole lot different than how we prepared for the rest of the season. And that was part of what we preached throughout the year, is like, if we're going to win matches, it's not necessarily about like this big picture, building it up, putting a match on a pedestal, right? It's about scoring the next point. It's about how you handle the next minute. It's about whether you get the next escape or the next takedown, right? And it's just focusing on one thing at a time and allowing yourself to wrestle your match the whole way. And we really tried to keep that consistent throughout the year. And I think the guys did a heck of a job of doing that at the Ivy tournament in particular. And if you go back and you look at all those matches, I mean, we flipped some results. We separated ourselves from some prior results. And those are the things that we encourage and ask these guys to do. Is like, okay, you lost to somebody. Okay, so be like, let's get ready for the next one. Now we flip that result. And then the next time you wrestle them, right, let's widen the gap on that guy. And we saw a bunch of that happening at the Ivy tournament. And as much as that's what we want as coaches, that's what we want them to see, so that they build that belief in themselves. And I think as that tournament rolled on, we had a couple guys flip results. We had a couple guys close gaps. We had a couple guys widen gaps. They were doing the things they needed to do to really put ourselves in a position to be really competitive at that tournament. And we approached it no differently than we did when we wrestled South Dakota State at the Elite Duels, or when we wrestled Rutgers up at Rutgers. It was just about wrestle who's in front of you, wrestle the situation in front of you, and we go from there.
I found it interesting at the Ivy League tournament because I was able to talk to talk to the winners after they came off the mat, and I believe it was I think Cross said it. He was like, "Hey," he was I think extremely confident. He was like, "Yeah, we're going, Philly in 2 weeks, coming away with the All Americans national champs." But I think it really just expressed the belief that those guys had. Was that belief there earlier in the season, or was it more so, as you kind of alluded to, built up throughout the campaign of the year? Then once they had that great Ivy League tournament, 3 Ivy League champs, you guys finished second to Cornell in a great team race. Was that belief always there, or was it something that kind of just had to build up throughout the year?
I think it was there. I think it developed over the course of the season, right? I think when we had some solid results at Journeyman, that was our first competition of the year. We had a couple guys knock off All Americans, the first competition of the year. And you could see the team kind of all like looking at each other, and they're like, well, he did it. Well, he did it. And they're like, all right, well, maybe I can do it. Right. And then, throughout the season, we had points where different guys, right, were having matches where you're like, oh, all right, I see that. Right. Like technically our backup 41 pounder beats an All-American at the Keystone Classic. And everybody's like, yeah, that's our backup. Like he just beat an All-American. Right. And the guys are looking at each other like, oh, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And all of a sudden you started to build a little momentum on that. So I think our belief throughout the season really started to step up. And that's where we go and wrestle Rutgers, and our guys are like, we walked out of that dual meet and our guys were ticked off. They were angry. And they're angry because they believe they were going to win that dual meet, even though Rutgers ranked higher, a bunch of higher ranked guys. And they were like, there's more. There's more. They knew there was more. They believed there was more. So it definitely built. I don't think we could have wrestled that Rutgers match in November and been in the same place we were at, right? I think that came at the right time for us, where we really were kind of hitting our stride with that belief.
That's a good way to put it into perspective. I wanted to quickly talk about CJ Composto with what he was able to do this year, getting on the podium again. He had a great finish to that tournament. I know you mentioned before, a couple guys in the blood round, he was the one who got through, but did it give you guys maybe not satisfaction, but like, okay, we got one through, and it kind of, emulates what our program's about. These guys believe they can do it. And, and again, in a deep weight class for CJ, he managed to finish, I believe he finished fourth in Philadelphia. So when he does something like that, that has to translate to the following season, correct?
Maybe. I mean, one of the most interesting conversations I had this year was, I was actually teasing CJ a little bit going into the season. And this is, in that thread of talking about belief. He was talking about being an All-American previously, and like, okay. And he's like, I used to be an All-American. And I was like, oh, they took it away from you? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, you said used to be. And he like paused and he looked at me. He's like, well, no, I guess I still am. I was like, yeah, that doesn't go anywhere. You just got to go do it again.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite moments of the season was CJ wins in the round of 12, and Darian and I are in the corner, and we turn to each other and we huge high five and hug each other. We look back and we're like waiting for CJ to cheer, and he like hands me his headgear and he's like, let's go. I got to get ready for the next one. And I look at Darian and I was like, well, I feel stupid now. All right, let's go. Then we walk off the mat, and honestly, as a coach, like thinking forward, we think about the momentum for next year and the belief for next year. That's going to, I think we'll reflect on that at some point and be like, that was the moment where we as a team decided like, like 8th isn't cool.
Yeah.
That's not what we want to do. Like, yeah, it's nice. Right? You want to be an All-American. If that's where you end up, so be it. But like, that's not what we, like, he came off the bat and he's like, no, I'm not done. And then he actually then rattled off even bigger wins along the backside to wrestle back to wrestle for 3rd and 4th. And like, you look at moments like that, you're like, okay, that's the stuff that'll build it. The placement, sure. But that mentality and that attitude. And then you combine that with CJ's actually leaving tomorrow to go down to Mexico to wrestle at Pan Am's with the U23 team. And I got the text from USA Wrestling, I think on the Monday after NCAA. So on Tuesday, we had a team meeting, and I was like, hey, CJ, you have this opportunity. If you're interested, I know it's close to the NCAAs, tell us where you're at. Like, if your body's not feeling it, you tell us. He's like, I'm in, let's go. Oh, okay. Okay. And honestly, CJ has looked better over the last 3 weeks of training than I think he did even going into the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
Right. So, the belief, I think, is continuing to build. But more than anything, I think it's the belief that there's more ahead still too, right? That's what makes this truly exciting, is like these guys are looking at this now and saying, okay, all right, now the bar's set at 4th. So that's where our bar is. And they believe they can do that.
That is amazing when you say, he goes, yeah, well, I was an All-American once, and he like forgot that he will have that accolade for the rest of his life. So he's like, okay, yeah, anything less than pretty much at this point, I guess a national title is like, okay, well, I didn't achieve my goal. So when you put that, I guess, and you extrapolate it over 10 guys, now that this new bar has set, how do you maintain this level of consistency and excellence? I mean, I can imagine you're going to carry over stuff that Roger did it during his time as head coach. You'll put your new stamp on it as well. But now how do you maintain that consistency and getting to be, top 15, top 10 type team in duels, and maybe you're a top 10 team in NCAAs, and you have guys competing for individual national titles again. How do you get back to that point and maintain that, and not just have it, be one blip on our radar, 1 year out of 10, or so to speak?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think the easiest way to really kind of frame that is helping our guys acknowledge that it's never going to go like they think it's going to go. Right. And as much as we want to maintain that and continue to build on that, there is going to be a dual meet. There's going to be a point in the season where it does not go how we want it to go. And it does not go how we planned for it to go and how we trained for it to go. And that's not the be all end all. Right. Like, that is just a step in the process to get us where we want to go. I want every single one of our guys to fail in some way, shape, or form, because the only way they're going to get better is if they fail. Right. You're going to learn when you fail. And, do I hope we recruit the next Cale Sanderson who never loses a college match? Sure. That'd be amazing. Right. The reality is nobody's going to do that. Right. There might be one guy who's going to do that at some point again in the future, and he's probably going to Penn State anyway. So, we'll go get the next guy. Right. So, those guys have to understand that we're going to trip up. We're going to fall. Right. And I would love for CJ to win a national title next year. I hope he goes undefeated and wins the national title next year. Odds are that's not going to happen. Right. And that's also okay. He loses a match during the year, so be it. We turn around. What do we learn? We get better. And I think that's what's going to help us maintain that level of success long term, is understanding it is not a foregone conclusion. We don't get to step on the mat and assume we're going to win. Right. And if and when we get punched in the mouth, it's not about whether we do get punched in the mouth. It's how we respond. And I think we started to build that this year. I think thinking ahead and looking towards the future of where we go from here. I mean, I'm excited to get a full year, a full summer with these guys, with Coach Cruz here full time for a full year as well. Right. Coach Cruz came in October, and he was not going to implement a ton of technique that we were suddenly going to pick up in October that we're going to hit during the season. Right. That's not how technique works at this level. So we're starting to infuse some of that now. What we did last season, we did with just starting to really focus on the belief and trust side of things. Now we're going to start to build on that with some of the technical and some of the wrestling side of things. Right. And hopefully that continues to instill a greater belief and a greater level of trust, all of which will be tested at some point too. So I think we're comfortable with where we are with it. Would love to continue to build on it. We're also going to dip in, I say wrestling's like the stock market, but that's probably a bad example at the moment. But we're going to have ebbs and flows a little bit, right? And the question is, can we hit those hurdles and speed bumps and continue to rise back up? And that's what we're focused on.
I like that domino effect of belief and trust. And now that it's built as a foundation, the technique, the advanced technique or new fine tuning of the technique just follows it right after. You keep bringing up failure, which is interesting because most coaches don't outwardly talk about failure. If they do, it's it's a part of the game and we're ready to embrace it, and so on and so forth. You've brought it up multiple times so far in this conversation, whether it's, you hope your guys fail so they can learn from it. You also said that you hope you fail at something so you can learn from it. Is there something that you have in mind? I mean, not that you want to fail, so to speak, or, you're hoping to fail and just plummet, but is there something in a season, an off season, something you do as a coach or a practice that, okay, that's a failure that is probably going to happen and that I would like to learn from that in order to be better?
That's a great question. Do I specifically have something in mind that I'm aiming to fail at? I don't know that there's a specific thing that I can pinpoint. We're just going to set our goals really high, right? And what comes along with setting your goals really high is not reaching your goals. In a big picture way, yes, that's a failure. But that can also find itself, you can fail in small ways too, right? And that's part of what we talk about is failure is getting yourself so tired in practice that you can't finish your last rep. That's a healthy failure, right? That's building towards the future. What is that from a coaching perspective or from a head coach's perspective? What does that look like? Well, maybe that's not connecting with a guy in the right way and learning that I didn't connect with him in the right way. And I had to figure out how I connect with him, right? Because my job is to maximize every single guy on my roster, whatever that is for them, whether it's wrestling, whether it's their internship aspirations, whether it's their academic performance. I need to make sure that I'm connecting with each and every guy on my team so that I'm helping them maximize who they are so that they can be the best wrestler they can be. Right. And I fully expect I'm going to fail at that at some point. I don't want to. I want to connect with every single guy on my team the right way. I am who I am, and my personality may not necessarily click right off the bat with every single person,
Right.
but I need to figure that out regardless. Right. And we need that give and take on the other side too, right? That failure is not necessarily just on me. It's probably a little bit on the other side too, but like I need to extend the olive branch to figure out how do we get better. Right.
Yeah.
And, and you can expand that out. Technically, I'm probably going to take some of my old school technique and bring it in, and they're going to be like, nah, not it. And I'm going to be like, all right, we're done. We're moving on. Where are we going? Let's figure it out. What's next? What do we need to develop, and how do we grow from here? So, recruiting, I'm going to fail more than I win anyway. That's what recruiting is, right? Mostly failures. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I think the perspective on failures is a key piece of what I want to instill with this group too, is like recognizing, understanding it's just an opportunity to get better.
I'm glad you brought up your old school technique, and I hate to say it's old school technique because it's only about 20 years ago at this point. But being a two-time champion yourself, of course, Darian Cruz, he was a national title winner over at Lehigh. One that has to help with your recruiting pitch. You just mentioned you're going to fail more than you succeed at recruiting because there's only so many programs, and of course everyone's vying for a lot of top guys. But having national champs on the staff and having those accolades yourself. One, I gotta imagine that helps in recruiting, and two, how do you reflect on your own wrestling career, because you've poured so much into coaching and doing stuff off the wrestling mat from when you were an athlete? How do you balance those two things now at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that the guys ask me all the time. And it's actually one of the questions I like the least coming from the team. Like, well, how did you win your national title? Yeah. And honestly, what it comes down to is like, it doesn't matter, because that's how I did it. But how you're going to do it is going to be very different, right? I won 2 NCAA titles. I probably hold the distinction of being the only 2-time national finalist to not score a takedown in the national finals. I'm not proud of that. That's just how that played out, right? All right. I won 2 NCAA title finals matches without scoring a takedown, right? Yeah. But that's just how it went. But that piece of it in and of itself is what I'm trying to help these guys understand, is like your journey, your path of how you get to a national title, or how you become an All-American, or how you become the best version of yourself, is not going to be like mine. It's going to be however it happens for you. To some degree, it's going to be driven by, how you develop and what you do in your wrestling. And some of it's going to be like, what are you going to will yourself to do in those moments? Like, are you willing to do whatever it takes to figure that out to get to that point? Right. And Coach Darian, I have loved getting to work with him and work alongside him the past year. He holds a lot of the same thoughts, and we were interviewing him for the job, and he was like, well, how did you win your national title? And I was like, I hate that question. I was like, how did you win your national title? He's like, I hate that question. And I was like, great, we're going to work well together. Right. So does it help with recruiting? I mean, accolades are accolades. And I won my NCAA titles 20 years ago now. Most of these guys are born after I won my NCAA titles. They don't know who I am. But like the mentality, the approach to the sport, some of that is going to be the timeless piece that I think will help these guys. The technical aspects, we'll bring some of that to the table. We'll adjust some of that too. But how we approach our wrestling is what's going to really matter. And I think if you talk to Darian, you talk to me, you talk to any national champion on how they got to where they are, well, there'll be a lot of similarities in kind of how they approached it, right? Like, you look back on the NCAA finals this year, and you think Rich Lovett's going to be upset that he didn't score a takedown?
No,
right?
I don't think you will. I'm glad that part of wrestling still carries over year to year, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years from now, where how they got there might be different, but there's a lot of similarities, and not maybe it's not technique or how much they scored, but they all won due to doing maybe A, B, and C correct. I wanted to rewind a little bit to the actual tournaments themselves. Of course, with the Ivy Leagues, because it was at Princeton this year, and there's only 6 Ivy League schools, so it's going to go on a rotation. Do you know when Penn is going to host the Ivy League tournament? And I only asked that because obviously you guys were the host school for NCAAs this year, so there's at least already some experience in that space. Do you know if Penn's hosted next year, or when you are in the rotation?
We are in the conversation for next year. I think we as a school are trying to wrap our heads around, like, do we want to run another tournament in such short notice? And I got to take a minute and shout out our Penn athletics staff and the Drexel staff as well, because we co-hosted with Drexel, but our Penn athletics operations staff, Scott Ward, Mike Martin in particular, like, they ran the show at NCAAs, and they were there Monday to Sunday. And we're absolute hammers on that. And it was awesome to see our people doing as much as they were doing. We'd love to host it at some point here in the future, maybe next year. We'll see if I can we're going to let them rest and recover a little bit from the NCAA championships before we nail that down. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to let Princeton host that for the inaugural one, and then for the NCAAs to be in Philly where we hosted it. And, you know, objectively as an Ivy League person, like the Ivy League prominence and what that means in the big picture is pretty cool. So yeah, we're looking towards hopefully hosting it, if not next year, the following year, I would say.
What was it like hosting NCAAs, or at least being one of the host schools with Drexel, having that Philly wrestling influence? Of course, you know, I mean, I'm a South Jersey guy, so it was an easy drive for me, you know, each day, only an hour over the Walt Whitman. But what was it like hosting it, being the host school? Anything different about that other than maybe just the, you know, the off the mat stuff, or what was that like with the lead up for those 2 weeks?
Yeah, if I'm completely honest with you, it was the most stressful point in the season for me was hosting the NCAA tournament. Not because I had anything to do or because we as like a Penn wrestling program had to do a ton. Most of the work was done, and our staff did an incredible job of taking care of everything. And we had an LOC who helped, local organizing committee who helped with everything. Honestly, when the NCAA week rolled around, it felt so weird. It was so different. I was fighting panic as a coach of like, our guys are like still in their dorms on Tuesday. Like, this doesn't feel right. And the guys were like still in their rooms on Wednesday morning. We worked out in our room on Wednesday instead of going down to the arena. So Tuesday we worked out in the arena. Wednesday we worked out in our room. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like the NCAA championships. Like this just feels like a home match. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. This doesn't feel right. This is supposed to feel bigger, but it doesn't. And it was the single most stressful point in the season for me as a coach, because I was like, this doesn't feel right. And do our guys feel this? Are they like totally out of whack because it's here? And ultimately the guys, they were like, yeah, it's just like any other tournament. I'm like, oh, that lesson came through. All right, great. I wish I listened to my own lesson on that one. But yeah, you know, it was incredible hosting it. It was so cool being able to wrestle in Wells Fargo Center and like walk out of the Wells Fargo Center and you can see FMC Tower from the Wells Fargo Center, which is on our campus, right? You like see our campus from where we're competing at the NCAA championships. And we had a little over 600 Penn fans there, which, you know, as a smaller school, if you will, to have that many fans at the NCAA championships was awesome. And we wrapped it up with a reception on Saturday night after the NCAA championships were over, after the finals were over. And we had over 300 people show up to our reception, which was just such a cool moment for our team and for our program.
Awesome to hear that. I talked to CJ right after he won his Ivy League title, and he was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys stayed in a team hotel or you just stayed on campus." But he was like, "Yeah, I usually like go on the road, you know, turn the AC down to about 65 degrees and be able to sleep in you know, have it, you know, be on like that on the road feel." So I'm glad you guys were able to adjust. You know, speaking of Wells Fargo Center, you know, and you were a Philly guy in Penn. You're from Jersey. Are you a Philly fan? You know, Eagle fan? Any of that, or are you up north?
So I'm from North Jersey originally. I am a New York sports fan.
Oh man,
Kevin McGuigan, shout out Kevin. He and I have some battles around Philly versus New York sports teams. I'm not a Giants fan, so I don't get the Giants Eagles hate. I'm a Jets fan, so I like to be miserable. But I am a Mets fan, so I get the Philly rivalry.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, so must have been a little weird. I think you could at least, you know, maybe you have the leg up this year because the Sixers are out of the playoffs, and of course the Flyers are out of the playoffs. So, you know, your New York fandom for the other sports are definitely taking advantage of Wells Fargo Center. As far as some of the other that's going around in college athletics right now, the transfer portal and NIL are big factors across all sports, and wrestling I think has been hit hard with the portal and NIL because it's, you know, again, in totality, wrestling's a non-revenue sport, so it's a little bit different than football and basketball. But I guess over the last 2 years, the transfer portal has been absolutely wild, especially with the tail end of the COVID year guys who are going to be, you know, those 6th or 7th year grad transfers, and they managed to have an extra year of eligibility. How have you navigated since coming back to coaching in an entirely different world from when you were a wrestler and initially a coach in college wrestling, where it's, hey, the portal's a real thing, NIL is all over the place, Wild West, Ivy League, I know it's vastly different, but with the way you guys manage your rosters, and of course, you know, scholarships are entirely different. How have you been able to navigate this world so far, at least over the last couple of years?
Yeah, you know, I think we've been a little bit fortunate that we've been mostly immune from it. We really have not been hit hard by the portal or NIL deals. Some of that is probably because we haven't had the levels of success yet that we would like to have, right? When we start having multiple All-Americans and guys competing for national champions, I'm sure the bag will be in their mailbox at some point. But we haven't necessarily crossed into that bridge. But the other side of that for us is, I mean, who we are, we're comfortable with who we are. We know what we offer. We know what we bring to the table. They can put as big of a bag on the table as you want, but if you're focused on your long term, then this is the right decision, right? Yeah. And it becomes a simple point of emphasis in recruiting or maintaining and keeping guys here. Like, yeah, there's going to be NIL opportunities out there, and maybe we have guys who graduate from Penn and go do an extra year, like Jacob Cardenas got his Cornell degree and went off to Michigan, right? Like, hey, if that's a path that you're going to go down, we'll support you in that. We're happy to help you with that one. But for the most part, like, our NIL is your lifetime earning. Yeah. And your lifetime earning is going to be a hell of a lot more than any NIL deal that you're going to get right now. Right. And even these big numbers that are allegedly out there at this point, like, cool. That's what you're going to make for the next 3 years. Like, cool. That's awesome. What are you going to do when you're done? Right. Because I hope that's going to carry you for the rest of your life. Because if all you're doing is wrestling, then, well, good luck long term. Right. Yeah. And then the portal side of things, I mean, I think guys see the value of the degree, right? They understand the value of the Ivy League degree, the Penn degree, and what that can do for you long term. Will guys end up in the portal? Maybe they'll end up in there. Will we recruit some guys out of the portal? Maybe. We also take pride in the loyalty of wrestling for Penn, right? Yeah. And like, we were fortunate last year. Max Hale, we talked to him at the very beginning, right? He's in your intro there, and Max Hale had the opportunity to go somewhere else this year instead of taking his 5th year here at Penn, and he ultimately decided to come back. And we love that he came back. And I'm so happy that I got to spend a year working with him this year, and he got to compete for us this year again. And he was going to graduate from Penn one way or the other. It would have been a grad opportunity, and he made the decision to come back and finish up his Penn degree and wrestle at Penn. Yeah. And we like to think that's who we are. That's what our guys think about when they think about the NIL and the portal and all this other stuff, and now the house stuff that's coming to, like, what's it all worth long term for you? It's a bigger picture perspective that we're really kind of, I don't even want to say selling. It's just the reality, right? We're just sharing that reality with people. So it's the Wild West, though. On one hand, I'm like, it's so cool to see the attention on wrestling and everybody being like, what the heck? And wrestling is NIL money, and what's going on there? And on the other hand, you're Rutgers guy, like, you're following Rutgers. I'm like, cool. Yeah, you went and did that. And, like, the flip side of that, all of that for me is, like, come here if you want to get better at wrestling. We'll develop you. We'll make you better. I don't need to buy you to get better. Come here, I'll make you better at wrestling. We'll figure out how we get you better.
Yeah, I like that perspective a lot. I think a lot of even big programs, I think, try to maintain that. I think it's just the reality of college sports. As you see it in football, basketball, you're going to see it probably in, you see a lot more in baseball now. Some of these other spring sports where maybe that it'll just continue to rise. And obviously with the house settlement, potentially coming down the pipe very soon ahead of next year, it'll be very different, especially with a potential roster cap with the teams that have to opt into the rev sharing. Which I'm assuming you guys are pretty much immune to that in terms of roster caps, just because you are an Ivy League institution.
Yeah, the Ivy League as a league has already come out and said we're opting out of the house settlement. So we no roster caps, no rev share, but I'll take 40 guys on my roster, be a happy camper.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to conclude with this, and again, Coach, I appreciate your time today. You guys have a great dual atmosphere at the Palestra. I haven't been in there a handful of times over the past couple of years, calling matches and just seeing that different atmosphere in Philadelphia, where people think the Palestra, they think basketball, but now they can start thinking wrestling a little bit as well. So, first of all, is there anything you can do to, I guess, maybe even improve your dual atmosphere? Just to gauge even more, or just to increase interest and attendance at Penn, and then. I have to ask everybody, because I do it with everybody. Dual meet championship for college wrestling, yes or no?
Well, I'll start with the what can we do to fill the Palestra, pack the Palestra, right? And this is extreme bias, but my extreme Penn bias, there's no better place in the country to wrestle dual meets other than the Palestra on the East Coast, right? Yeah. There's nowhere else, right? Rec Hall. Sure, Rec Hall is actually modeled after the Palestra, so really it's just an extension of the Palestra, right? And if you actually look at them, they look almost identical. It was cute of them to copy that after us, but in terms of like being out here and like on the eastern side of this country, like we're one of the best venues in the country, hands down. How do we get more butts and seats? Well, honestly, I'm gonna be very simplistic on this. We got to win more, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think when we become a team that people want to watch wrestle, then people will show up and watch. And so it's on us to figure out how we do that. We can market until we're blue in the face, and if we don't put a good product on the mat, nobody's going to show up. So we got to keep getting better at wrestling, and we'll get butts in seats.
Yeah.
National Dual Championship. I'm all about it. I'm all for it. I am not for what we're doing right now. I think it's nonsense. I think it's just a farcical, ridiculous concept that we're putting out there. And I'm just being blunt on this one. I mean, the fact that we're going to try and guess what teams are going to be the best teams in the country the first week in November, second week in November, okay, cool. But if we're going to do it the right way, I'm all for it, right? And I think, in my opinion, if we're going to do it the right way, we have to do it where it has an impact on the overall national championship, so that we're incentivizing teams to show up and participate in it, right? Duels are the spectator-friendly part of the sport.
Yeah.
Right. I'm on the NCAA championship committee. We selected Minnesota for 2028. Right. We're going to be in the football stadium for 2028, which is really cool. And I think we'll sell a lot of tickets, but we're not 100,000 seat arena crowd. We're just not. Right. And part of that is because outside of our wrestling regulars who love to sit and torture themselves for 12 hours plus a day for 3 days straight for the NCAA championships. Right. Which, don't get me wrong, I love the NCAA championship, and I think it is like one of the best events in the world. And I think the Wells Fargo Center learned that this year.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, the average fan is not going to get excited about sitting in an arena for 12 plus hours a day. Maybe now that we're serving booze, maybe, but like that's the reality of where we are. If we really want to drive interest in this sport beyond the casual fan or beyond the super invested fan, we got to be able to engage the casual fan, and dual meets are the answer for that. And the dual meet championships, I think, would really help us go along that. So yes, I'm team dual meet championship if done right, not like it currently is.
Yeah, I'm glad I got you aboard. I think pretty much everybody I've talked to the last year and a half or so has been team dual meet. So it's a matter of what we're waiting for at this point. So I'm with you on the national duels as far as it being earlier in the season, where I don't understand it either. I think it's a step in the right direction, considering that there is a financial incentive as well in the NIL world. But again, I think it should include the season. I mean, you're from Jersey, you know how it works. Team championships and then the individual championships. It's pretty simple to me, but I digress. The NCAA and I guess the rest of college wrestling have to try to figure out that part of the calendar. Maybe it's a sport or so on and so forth. But Coach, I appreciate your time today. Really appreciate catching up with you, and looking forward to your first official year as the head coach of Penn this coming year. And again, good luck. Hopefully a successful summer, and hope to see you at the Palestra and also at NCAA's again next year as well. Possibly the Ivy League championships as well again next year as well.
Well, I appreciate having me on. It was a pleasure talking to you, and look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
Matt Valenti with me here on On3 Wrestling. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video. Leave a comment. And be sure to follow me on social media. Follow Coach on Twitter and all his social media platforms. And, of course, follow Penn Wrestling on their social media platforms as well. We'll see you next time.